welcome back. It's so good to see you. So, today we are going to be talking about a book that I recently read. And I don't actually have the book because I have been reading on the Kindle. Is that what it's called? I don't know. But I know a lot of you like book sounds, so I just grabbed just a random book off my shelf. It's not random, it's a good book. But so that while I'm talking, I can do page flipping, tapping, that kind of thing. Just for extra background noise, But let's talk about the book that I just recently read. I want to start another book, and I can't start it until I talk about this one because I don't want to get my books confused, because my brain, I can't handle that. So, the book that I read this month was Home Before Dark, a novel by, who wrote this book? Riley Sager? I don't know. I've never read a scary story, ever. Like, not really. I've read like little short story, nothings, or like those 2-minute scary story sentences or whatever, but I've never actually read like a legit scary story. So I was like, I want a scary story. So I went looking on Amazon for scary stories, and this one kept popping up, and I read all the reviews, and it was like, oh my gosh, so scary, blah 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 blah. So I don't know why, but sometimes I like to be scared. I don't know. So let me read you the little description that I was able to get off of Amazon. It says, what it's about. A woman inherits a haunted house made infamous by her father's horror memoir, uncovering dark secrets and questioning the line between fact and fiction. Okay, so let's get into this book. I just have to straight out say, I was disappointed. I was disappointed in the book. It's not that I don't recommend it. I mean, it's an okay book. It says it's a New York Times bestseller. But I wanted the crap scared out of me, okay? And that didn't happen not one single time in this book. Pause for a second. For those of you who have been asking for stomach sound videos, you're probably going to get it today, because my stomach has been making crazy sounds all morning. And I can't control it. Doesn't matter how much water I drink or whatever, it's just like crazy sounds. I don't know what the deal is. So you're going to hear stomach sounds in this video. But I wanted the crap scared out of me, and it didn't do that. Not a single part of this book was scary to me. So I was disappointed with that, because I wanted to get scared. There was one like line that I was like, ooh, is it about to get scary? And then it didn't. Anyway, so the story is about this girl, or this woman, and her father is dying, and on his deathbed or whatever, I think he tells her that the house that they grew up in when she was a little girl, not grew up in, but they lived in this house when she was a little girl for 21 days. They moved out very quickly because supposedly this house was like haunted. They keep referencing like the Amityville horror house, okay? It's not that, but it's similar to that. They moved into this house and whatever, and they had to leave very quickly. Anyway, so when they left that house, it was no longer involved in their life, but apparently her father had kept the house, like he had never sold it. And on his deathbed, he's like, I never sold the house. The house is in your name. You know, do whatever you want with it, sell it, whatever. But don't ever go back to that house. You can never go back to that house. And she's like, what the hell, you know? And then he dies. And she just so happens to be she flips houses, okay? That's like what she does for a living. And she has a partner and stuff, you know. So after her dad dies, she's talking to her mom, and she's like, Dad kept the house, and like whatever, you know. And even her mom was like, yes, but you can never go to that house. I will buy the house for you full price, and I'll do something with it, but you cannot step foot in that house, okay? And you're like, what the hell happened in this house, right? Well, the cool thing about this book is it's like 2 books in one, because I think she was like 5 or 6 years old when they bought this house. When her parents were quite young, they saw this. It was like an old, I guess, I don't want to say Victorian house, but something like that, you know. It was a house that had history. And it was kind of like in a small town, you know, but it was like the most magnificent house in this small town. And it was, I feel like it was kind of cheap or whatever. So her parents bought this house, and it was kind of a fixer-upper as well, because it was an old house, you know, but it was beautiful. They said it has good bones and all that stuff, you know. So they buy the house, they move in, and they were told when they moved into the house that the reason why it's so cheap is because multiple people have died in this house, okay? So they're like, what? You know, but it gets into the stories of the people who died in the house. But they're like, okay, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to mention it. We're just going to ignore the history of the house and just be in this house, you know? And the husband, or her father, was a writer, and he wrote fiction books, you know, and he wanted to get into writing nonfiction or stuff like that, but all the people, his like publishers and stuff, were like, nah bro, stick to what you know. So he was kind of like in a writing slump, and he figured, well, you know, this house, I can have my own writing room, and maybe the juices will get flowing, you know. So once they move into the house, I need to back up. The reason that I know all this information is because when they had to move out of the house, they like left in the middle of the night in a hurry. They left everything that they owned in that house, and they never went back. And they went to a hotel, and they called the police and reported all these things that had happened in the house. And it was unbelievable, because they had said that like the house had spirits in it. It was haunted, you know. Just think of the Amityville, you know, like maybe don't think about the Amityville, but like haunted house like that, okay? And so afterwards, like some reporter came and talked to him, because it's a small town, so they're like, what, haunted house? So this reporter came and like wrote a story about what the man said had happened and why they had to leave and they could never return. And then other media outlets, I guess, like picked up on it, and it turned into this huge deal. And then book offers started coming in. They're like, okay, you can write a nonfiction story, but it has to be this story, you know. So he was like, okay. So he wrote this story, and it blew up, okay, like crazy. That's why it was kind of like Amityville Horror, you know, because like the Amityville Horror house is a real house that think went for sale like a couple years ago. You know, people have bought it, you know, and I think the last people that bought it, they were like, we've never had any issues. Like, we don't know what, you know. But anyway, so he writes a story, it explodes. People come to this small town to like look at this house, and since nobody actually bought the house, it's just been sitting there. So there are these, like, they call them ghouls, okay, like just like crazy people who are obsessed with the house, and sometimes people will break in and, you know, try and spend the night there. It's like one of those things that teens would go and be like, oh, you're a man, right? Well, go spend the night at, I think it was called like Baneberry Hill or something like that. I don't know. Go spend the night at that house. Just, you know, whatever. So he wrote a book about their time in this house. So that's why I'm like, it's a book inside a book, because each chapter, which I do like this about this book, each chapter you get present time, her life now, in the house or around the house, and then the next chapter you get chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 of her dad's book, you know. And so it's like they're kind of experiencing things at the same time, because throughout each chapter of her dad's book, it's like, we bought the house our first night, you know, like stuff like that. And things happen in this house where, like, at a certain time you can hear bells ringing, because it was one of those old time houses where each room had like this little cord that you could pull, and it would ring a bell in like the kitchen or whatever. It kind of reminded me, the way they described it, it reminded me of Cinderella, because, like, you know how Cinderella's stepsisters are like, Cinderella, and they like ring the bell. She's like, oh, she has to do everything. It reminded me, like, that's what I saw when I was reading the book, you know. But anyway, so like when they were in the kitchen or whatever, these random bells would ring, and it's only the dad, the mom, and the little girl. So it's like, who the hell could be ringing these bells, you know? And so they're like, somebody broke in, but by the time they got to the room where the bells were ringing, nobody was in there, you know? And so they would set up like a way to make sure no one could get in, and if they could, you would be able to tell they got in through this window or this door or something like that, you know. And as you're reading chapters of her dad's book, then the next chapter is what's going on with her, like right now, because she's decided, I'm not going to sell the house, I'm going to flip it and then sell it, you know. And so she's at the house alone. You finish the chapter where crazy stuff happens in her dad's book, and then you get to her chapter, and shockingly, the strange, crazy things that happen in the book are happening now. And she has no memory of her time in this house when she was like 5 or 6, and she never believed the story, because she's like, she only remembered like kind of happy times in that house. So she's like, she always thought that her parents just made it up, because she didn't know that they kept the house. She thought, oh, they got too deep into this house, they had to make up a story so that they could make money, because this story did make them like mega rich, you know. It provided for them for like the rest of their life. So she never believed it. She never believed it for a second. She thought that both of her parents just lied to her whole life, you know. So when things start happening in the house that are matching up with the book, she's like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on here? Is there some truth to the book? And so she's decided, as she's going to fix up this house with some groundskeeper guy who her dad had kept on all these years, they're going to fix up the house together or whatever. She's like, I'm going to do research, because I need to prove that this story is BS, okay? So she's on a mission to prove that the story is crap, but every time she tries, she's like stopped because she's like, that's true. And that's also true. Uh-oh. And then weird occurrences just happen in this house. And it's not like so weird where it's like, oh, this is scary. It's just like, what the hell? What the hell? But when she was a little girl, she apparently saw spirits. There were 3 spirits. One of them was like Miss Pennyface. One of them was, I can't remember the name. I just remember Miss Pennyface. But there was another like little girl, and there was a man that would come to her at night. And I know it sounds scary, but in the book it wasn't as scary as I wanted it to be. But there was a man that would come through her armoire, I guess, at night while she was asleep and tell her that she would die in this house. Like, yeah, it sounds scary, but it wasn't scary in the book. I don't know. And she has no memories of these spirits, but she went to her parents took her to a child psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever, and so she went as an adult to go talk to that child psychologist, and the child psychologist was like, yes, I remember you. And she was like, you did explain that you saw these spirits, and the doctor was like, I don't believe in that type of thing, but I believed that you as a child believed it. So you did see something when you were a child in that house. And she's like, what the F? So like everything in the book that she's trying to prove wrong, she can't prove wrong. And you're like, okay, so when's the scary stuff gonna happen? And then nothing scary happens. And I'm like, like it builds up and then it just deflates. Like it was very disappointing. But what I did like about the book is I had no idea where it was going. I hate predictability, and there was nothing predictable in this book. Like you thought it would go somewhere and then it didn't go there. It went a different way, and I like that. I like not knowing what's going to happen next, But I was very disappointed, like almost to the point of being angry at the book. And that's like, I don't want to give anything away because I don't want to say that the house was not haunted or there wasn't spirits there. And I don't want to say that everything that happened in the house was true in the way that her father said that it happened. There were truths and, lies. It all fits together well, but it was just so disappointing. When I finished the book, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was like angry because I was like, I felt like I wasted my time. And I'm like, how is this book a New York Times bestseller? Like, I just don't get it. And what made me the most mad is I read the reviews and they were like, wow, this book was so intense and it was so scary. And it 100% was not at all. So would I recommend it? If you want to be scared, no. If you want kind of like a mystery, like what is happening, yeah, it would be a good book. But if you're wanting to be scared, don't read it because it's a lie. Like, it's not a scary book. Don't tell me you're a scary book if you're not a scary book, I want to read a scary book. So I was complaining to my mom. I was like, this is crap, because I wanted to get scared. And she was like, well, there's this one book, and it's by Frida McFadden. And I'm like, okay, well, sold. Okay, because you know I love Frida McFadden. But she's like, it scared me, like, really bad. And I'm like, Frida McFadden, scary? You know, like, hers is more like mystery, like, what is happening? And you never know what's going to happen. And when you think you do, she flips the script, you know, like, and blows your mind, which is why I love her books. But I was just like, scary? I don't know. She's like, whatever. So she recommended a book, which I am going to immediately start reading today to get over this stupid book. So hopefully it'll be somewhat scary. I guess we'll talk about it next month, right? Because I read very slow. I'm a very slow reader, you know. But also because I got other stuff that I got to do, so I can't just read a book straight through. But if you can think of a super scary story that I can read, that's not, I don't want to read The Shining. Like, I looked it up, and like, The Shining is supposedly like the scariest book of all time, right? But I feel like it would be a waste of my money, because the whole time I would be seeing Jack Nicholson, and I would be like, because I know that books and movies are different, but I have watched all the movies, plus the made for TV specials and stuff like that. So I feel like I already know the whole story, and nothing would be a surprise. And you know I don't like that. So but anyway, if you know of a super scary, really good, like, page turner type book, please let me know, because I want to read a scary story. Anyway, so yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed that, I guess. I don't know. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.